What if I told you that one of the most respected judges in America lost his temper in court, and it almost cost him everything? Judge Caprio, known for his calm and fair decisions, had a shocking outburst that sent shockwaves through the entire legal community. Stick around, because in this video, we're diving deep into the story that no one saw coming. If you're part of the Black Visionaries family, hit that like button right now and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories like this one. Let's get into it. It was just another regular day in the courtroom. The sun barely shone through the blinds as the hum of voices and the shuffle of papers echoed in the halls of the courthouse. To the average observer, it seemed like any other case that would come and go. But for Judge Caprio, a highly respected figure in the judiciary, this day would turn out to be anything but ordinary. What started as a routine trial would end up becoming a defining moment in his career, one that would shake his reputation and force him to question everything he thought he knew about fairness and control. Judge Caprio had spent years cultivating a reputation for being calm, composed, and fiercely fair. He wasn't the type to let his emotions cloud his judgment. Known for his level-headed approach, Caprio had earned the trust of both the public and the legal community. His courtroom was one of order and professionalism, a place where even the most difficult cases were handled with dignity. But today, that reputation would be put to the test. The defendant standing before him was a man with a long and troubled history in the legal system. His name had become synonymous with trouble, always in and out of courtrooms, never quite able to break free from the grip of the law. He wasn't just any criminal, though. He was a local figure with influence, and his antics often made headlines. This time, however, the stakes were even higher. The public had been buzzing about this case for days, with rumors flying about what might happen in the courtroom. It seemed like everyone had an opinion, and the tension in the air was palpable. As the proceedings began, Judge Caprio settled into his seat with his usual confidence. He looked around the room, nodding at the familiar faces of the attorneys, the witnesses, and the members of the jury. He knew that today wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to maintain his composure. However, as soon as the defendant opened his mouth, Caprio sensed that something was off. The man didn't just challenge the charges, he was aggressive and confrontational. His words were sharp, and his demeanor was hostile. He wasn't interested in a fair trial. He was looking for a fight. The tension in the room grew as the defendant began making accusations. He pointed fingers at the prosecutor, accusing them of bias. His voice grew louder, more frantic with every passing moment. The courtroom, usually a place of calm and professionalism, now felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Everyone in the room watched in disbelief as the defendant continued his tirade, uncaring of the rules of decorum that typically govern such proceedings. Judge Caprio's patience was beginning to wear thin. He was used to difficult defendants, but this was different. The man's disrespect for the court and his refusal to follow basic protocol was unlike anything Caprio had encountered before. He attempted to regain control of the situation, but every effort seemed to make things worse. "Order! Order in the court!" he shouted, banging his gavel. But the defendant, instead of backing down, only escalated the chaos. He stood up from his seat, shouting at the prosecutor, throwing wild accusations about the court's integrity. The room was filled with tension, and Caprio could feel his blood begin to boil. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. For the first time in years, Caprio lost his cool. "Enough," he yelled, his voice cracking under the strain of the moment. It wasn't just a command, it was a release of all the tension that had been building for hours. The courtroom fell silent as everyone turned to look at Caprio, their eyes wide with surprise. This wasn't the calm, measured judge they had come to know. This was a man who was fed up, who was no longer willing to tolerate the disrespect being thrown in his face. The outburst was shocking, not just to those in the courtroom, but to the millions of people watching from home. In the age of smartphones and instant uploads, the entire event was captured on video and quickly went viral. Social media exploded with opinions, and before Caprio could even make his way out of the courtroom, the online world was already buzzing with commentary. Some people defended the judge, arguing that he had every right to stand his ground and maintain order. Others, however, were not as forgiving. They criticized him for losing his temper, questioning whether a judge should ever act in such a manner. Was it unprofessional? Was it an abuse of power? And perhaps the most pressing question, did Caprio still deserve to sit on the bench? The public reaction was swift and intense. News outlets picked up the story, and Caprio's actions became a topic of heated debate across the nation. Legal experts weighed in, with some defending him, claiming that he had been pushed to the limit by an unruly defendant, while others argued that judges needed to maintain a level of emotional control at all times, no matter the circumstances. The controversy seemed to grow with every passing hour, and Caprio was left to grapple with the fallout. But Caprio didn't back down. He believed deep down that he had done what was necessary to restore order in the courtroom. The defendant's actions have been disrespectful and disruptive, and Caprio felt he had no choice but to act decisively. However, the pressure of the public backlash weighed heavily on him. As the days went by, Caprio found himself facing not just criticism from the public, but also an official investigation. It was standard procedure in cases like this for a judicial oversight committee to step in and evaluate the situation, but Caprio couldn't shake the feeling that this investigation would be different. His reputation, carefully built over the years, was now at risk. The investigation process was long and exhaustive. Interviews were conducted with everyone who had been in the courtroom that day, and the video footage of the incident was reviewed from every angle. Caprio was called in to testify, and the weight of the situation was clear on his face. It was a moment of reckoning. Would he be reprimanded? Would he be removed from the bench? Or would he emerge from this scandal relatively unscathed? As the investigation dragged on, Caprio was left in a state of uncertainty. He knew that the consequences of this incident could have a lasting impact on his career. He had spent years building a reputation as a fair and impartial judge, but now it seemed like that reputation was in jeopardy. His emotions were running high, and he couldn't help but wonder if he had made a mistake. Should he have handled the situation differently? Should he have remained calm, no matter how challenging the defendant had been? Finally, after weeks of waiting, the investigation came to a close. The committee's decision was announced, and Caprio braced himself for the worst. But to his surprise, the verdict wasn't as harsh as he had feared. While Caprio's actions had been deemed impulsive, they had not violated any major rules of conduct. Instead of facing disciplinary action, he was given a formal warning. The committee acknowledged the pressures of the courtroom and the extreme nature of the defendant's behavior, but they also made it clear that judges were expected to maintain control at all times. The decision was a relief for Caprio, but the damage had already been done. The public's opinion of him had been shaken, and while he still had his job, the trust he had worked so hard to build had been tarnished. Caprio would now have to work harder than ever to restore his reputation. He would have to prove to the people and to himself that he was still capable of being the fair, composed judge they had once trusted. In the end, Judge Caprio learned a valuable lesson about the pressures of the courtroom and the fine line between maintaining order and losing control. He knew that the moment he had lost his temper would forever be a part of his legacy, but he also understood that how he responded to that moment was what truly mattered. With time, he would rebuild the trust he had lost, but the events of that day would always serve as a reminder of the human side of justice, a side that even the most respected figures are not immune to. Hey, if you're rolling with the Black Visionaries family, you already know what to do. Smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because we've got more powerful, jaw-dropping stories coming your way that you won't want to miss. Stay inspired, stay strong, and remember, your dignity is never up for debate.